So, for those of you that don't know me yet, my name is Jenna. I am the founder of Her AI Agency. And we essentially are a brand strategy agency with a strong focus in AI implementation. The goal here being to work smarter and not harder. There's so many great tools available to us here in 2025 that can really cut down on a lot of the manual work that we used to be doing. And so my goal is to kind of help you implement those solutions and be able to reach a broader audience, reach more people, and essentially get more done without entirely overwhelming yourself, particularly if you have a small team. Today, we're going to talk about reels that convert. And we're going to specifically talk about reels in terms of for businesses. Obviously, there's a big difference between reels that you might see on TikTok that are for entertainment purposes, dancing videos, things like that. That's a little different than what we're going to want to use reels for our businesses. So everything that I'm talking about today is really focused on what's going to drive attention to your business and help you reach a new audience. Reels to date are the best way to reach your non follower audience. And by that, I mean people that aren't already liking your page, may not know about you, because those reels are, they go to the reels tab and they're served up by Meta a lot more than text based posts or even pictures. So reels really can put more eyes on your business terms of people that might not otherwise find you. So they are a great social media option to really enhance your engagement and your following and get the growth that you're looking for there. So again, we're talking today specifically about how to use them on a business perspective. For your business, there are basically three ingredients of high converting reels that make a big difference. And the first one is promising your outcome right at the top. What people are looking for when they're looking for a product or a service, they're looking for a solution to a problem. That is what you're selling them. And so you want to show them that you can give them that outcome immediately. You have essentially 2 seconds. It used to be about three, and now it's 2 seconds to really grab somebody's attention and keep them from scrolling to that next video. At 3 seconds, that's when, if they haven't engaged with it, if they haven't lingered on it, that's when the reel is going to roll over to the next one. So you've got about 2 seconds to capture that attention and hook them in. So you want to make sure that whatever you're promising them, whatever that outcome is, whatever you want them to learn from that reel is crystal clear right in those first couple of seconds. That very first frame is what is going to determine if somebody keeps looking or if they, scroll on through. One of the mistakes that I see people make a lot is they'll put maybe their logo or some kind of intro at the beginning of your reel. Those are potentially that has a lot of merit maybe for like a long form YouTube video or a webinar, something like that. But in a reel, that is not going to capture their attention. I don't really care how popular your logo is, how well known you are. A logo alone or an intro screen is not going to hook anybody in. So make sure it really best practice is a face on screen in those first 1 to 3 seconds. And I can make a case for, maybe a product or something like that you're promoting. But you want that very first frame to be what grabs their attention and brings them in. So in addition to making your promise crystal clear, the other thing you want to do is text overlay the specific result that they're going to get, right? So by the end of this video, you will blink, or 15 seconds to learn blank, something like that. That is how you want to approach those first few seconds. And then the second part of that is retention is key. What Facebook tracks is or Meta in general, it tracks a couple of things. They track 3 second views. So that's your rollover to the next reel. And then also 15 seconds. And those are kind of the key metrics that you're going to want to pay attention to in terms of how long you're keeping people's interest. So retention, once you get them, you want to keep them watching your video. So we don't want any kind of dead air. Reels are just not long enough, and you can't hold people's attention long enough to have any kind of like fluff or transition time. Just really, really fast, punchy. Even if it feels almost choppy to you, that's a little better than long pauses. You want large, high contrast captions. They're ugly. I don't love them, but what performs best are those like neon highlight keyworded captions. And maybe it's not even in your brand color. If you've got soft, muted tones, that's not really where you're going to want to use those. You're going to want to use those bright, bold, high contrast colors that grab people's attention on mobile. And keep in mind that, people have, their phones in particular on different levels of brightness. So what looks really bright and bold to you on your screen might be a little bit duller for somebody who's got nighttime filtering and things like that turned on. So that's why we want those really bright, high impact colors. And then you want to do a pattern break every 3 to 5 seconds. You do not want your reel to be like 15 seconds of you staring at the camera and narrating. You want to interrupt the pattern every 3 to 5 seconds. That could be, you could zoom in or out, you could add text, you could crop over to like a checklist or some B-roll. But that's what keeps engagement up, and that's what keeps people engaged with your video. So make sure that you're adding in those elements to really kind of draw people in and keep them there. And then a specific call to action. Another mistake I see with Reels a lot is kind of dumping too much information at once or giving them multiple paths. Treat a Reel sort of like you treat a landing page. I want one very clear call to action, one thing that you want them to do, whether it's comment a keyword, whether it's go to your website after, fill out a form, join a webinar or a challenge, whatever it is, make that one call to action really, really clear and make that the only thing that you want them to do. You can lose people when they have to make decisions or decide which path they're going to go down. Make sure that it's very laser focused. And this is something we talked about last week and we'll continue to talk about. Clicks you do not want those in your caption. You don't really want them on your social media captions anymore, even in text-based. All of the clicking needs to be either done in a comment. You can pin a comment underneath a reel and put your link or something there. Or you can ask them to DM you like a keyword, and you can automate that delivery of that. And that is really kind of the best way to go about it right now, because that's what creates engagement on that platform. If you're just sending them to your website, obviously great for you, they're going to your website, but Meta would prefer them to stay on Meta in their ecosphere. So if you ask them to comment or DM you, that is engagement on their platform, and that is going to further help your reels be more visible in their algorithm. And so I've got sort of a blueprint here. It's kind of the SOS blueprint is what it stands for. And this is sort of your plug and play structure. And if you follow this for basically every reel, you're going to maximize your views here. So the first thing is to stop the scroll, right? Like we don't want them to go on to that next reel. We want to stop them and catch their attention. So again, that hook, that promise, bold text right away, first couple of seconds, that's really key. So an example is something like a 3-step system to get 50% more leads today, or something that's going to grab their attention right away. Then your offer. You want to teach or demonstrate or show one specific outcome. Again, there was not enough time in these reels to get into the weeds of a lot of nuance of what you offer. Show actual results or actual steps, actual results, over the shoulder style recordings, before and afters, demonstrate how your product works within those, next sort of 2 to 40 seconds, depending on the length of your reel. And then at the end, you want to send your traffic somewhere, right? So you want a strong call to action, and ideally you want that both spoken and on your reel itself. So a strong call to action with an on-screen keyword, something like comment or offer or something like that. And that static end frame, you want that to hold a good amount of time, like 5 to 10 seconds, so that they have the time to comment or DM you or whatever that action is. So the opposite of what I say in the beginning, right? Where I'm like, don't linger too long on the first, slide. Make sure that it grabs their attention. That one you want to linger long enough that they have the time to take the action you want them to take before it rolls over to the next reel. So if you've got them, you're not worried at the end about like how long that piece is. You want to get them that time. In terms of reels, people ask me a lot about like what's the ideal length. And it depends a lot on your audience, on your niche, what it is that you're promoting. But I would say that the general framework is between like 30 to 90 seconds. I can even make a case for like 15 seconds if you can do it really short and really punchy. You might want to use those to lead into longer reels, as sort of like an attention grabber, but 30 to 90 seconds. And the goal would be to make it as short as you can to convey the information that you want. Longer is not better. Shorter is better as long as you're conveying the information you want and you're giving them that promise and outcome in that. If you can do that in 30 seconds, great, better retention and more watches on something shorter. So truly get to the point, get it done, and then send them to the next step in your process. So copy formulas that convert. Outcome in time is really powerful on these reels, particularly if you're speaking to, an audience that's really busy, if you're speaking to other business owners, things like that. X result in 15 seconds. Or, the same way, I kind of advertise these office hours, right? Like I'm going to break this down in 15 to 20 minutes. I'm not going to waste an hour of your time. I'm going to give you the information you need quickly. People like that. They understand what they're committing to, how long it's going to take them to learn. That is a really high powered conversion to promise that outcome in a set amount of time. And then I recommend kind of taking them through 3 steps, and I will kind of break those steps down in a minute, but essentially your outcome promise, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then your call to action is really kind of the formula that you want there. And then for your captions, so this is what kind of shows up on the bottom 1/3 of your reels. And another thing I see a lot, and it is frustrating, Meta basically that bottom 1/3 gets cut off between the the caption itself, between the little, advertisement they've got about the next reel that's coming up. So anything that's important in your reel, you want to make sure it's in the top 2/3 of that reel. Leave the bottom kind of blank and open for your caption and for, basically some margin space in case it gets cut off. Different screen sizes, things like that all affect that. So top 2/3 is where you want to be, and really that middle third kind of in the direct middle is ideal. So for your caption, these should be fairly short. You want a one line at the very top that reinforces what your hook is, what you're teaching them there. Then maybe a couple of bullet points with what they'll learn or the highlights, something else to kind of draw them in. You do want to put your call to action and the keyword, whatever it is that you're asking them to do in that caption, and then relevant hashtags. This is not the place for hashtag stuffing. It looks messy, particularly for businesses. This isn't, again, we're not necessarily content creators on TikTok trying to grow a massive following for monetization. We're trying to sell what our business does. So pick a few hashtags that are relevant, that will help with searchability, but don't overstuff it and make it look unprofessional and messy. That doesn't really play well in the business space. So these are 10 hook templates that work in essentially any niche for businesses. Things like steal my 3-step blank system, growth on Facebook system, something like that. The one change that lifted our conversions last week or our leads last week. A quick win, and that, a quick win in 90 seconds could be a really powerful one. I'm going to fix your problem in 60 seconds. Here's why your reels aren't converting, and the fix. That's a specific example, but, it could be, changed to what you do. Here's why your dishwasher isn't running or isn't making the dishes clean, something like that, depending on what you're promoting. If your problem looks like this, do this instead. If you aren't getting enough leads, here's why. Before and after. So from here to here in a week, from here to here in 30 days, something like that. Stop doing blank. Common mistake. That is really, really powerful, particularly if you're in like the coaching and consulting space. That one tends to have really great retention rates. The script we use to get blank. The script we use to book more calls, the script we use to convert more clients, something like that. And then 3 things I do today to blank. Again, fill in, what the problem is in your industry, your niche. But these 10, if you kind of just rotate through these 10, addressing different problems, different pain points for your audience. These are all really, really high converting hooks that will really improve your both retention rate and your general watch rate in the algorithm as well. Pattern breaks. So we talked about this a minute ago. So this is not reels are not the place for steady cam one shot. You really do want to kind of zoom in, zoom out, show some stock imagery if you need to, show a checklist or some text. I've listed here like 12 easy pattern breaks, cutting and zoom transitions, B-roll overlays, on-screen checklists, or like a numbered list of stuff, before and after slides, over-the-shoulder demos, the text highlight swipes where it shows you one or two keywords and then it goes back to maybe you talking or your product. Beat matched cuts. Obviously, sound improves reel visibility a lot. So make sure that, if you are doing something where you're not talking as much, if you can match that with sort of the beat, those tend to perform really well. Caption color flips. So I like to do this one a lot. So if you are using one color to highlight your keyword for the first 3 seconds, flip it in the next 3 seconds. That keeps that attention on it, and it's going to keep people interested in those keywords, as opposed to, okay, they've kind of mentally learned like hot pink means they want me to pay attention to that. Your brain can kind of start to minimize that. So maybe it starts as hot pink and then it becomes bright lime green. Those are good ways to really bring people back in. Something entering the frame, a hand, a prop, the product itself, quick screen recordings. If you're going to show a screen, make sure you're zooming in really tight on what it is on that screen you want people to see. This isn't the time for like your full browser window or like a dashboard. Like, zoom in on that metric or that specific feature, whatever it is that you're showing. Camera angle switches. You can start face first, introduce yourself, introduce your hook, and then maybe, you're doing like an over the shoulder shot or you're walking down the street, something like that. Those different camera angles can be really powerful. And pause and screenshot moments. Taking screenshots of reels, people doing that, or saving them are other big algorithm bumpers. So if you've got something, again, we talked about like maybe listing out, 3 steps or a checklist or something like that. If you can pause long enough and say like, screenshot this, that can be a great way to increase retention and show engagement to Meta as well. And then 5 high intent calls to action. Obviously, you're going to want to customize this to your audience, your niche, but ones that always work really well are comment guide, comment script, comment demo, comment book, and comment proof. All of those are really high performing. It doesn't require somebody to like remember something really specific. Like, I see people use, specific brand keywords, and there's potentially an argument for that every once in a while. But you want it to be something easy for somebody to type and remember. So if you're offering them a guide to blank, comment guide. If you are offering them a before and after, comment proof, things like that. Again, match your promise with your keyword there. And then I've got sort of 3 universal fill in the blank scripts here that work really well and I've broken it down into service businesses, a product business, and a local business. So for service businesses, something like the 3-step process that changes our clients' conversions or something like that. And then you give them those 3 steps, right? Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. And then at the end, comment guide, and I'll send you the full checklist. For products, this is where you obviously want to highlight what your product does. So you're going to show the before, the problem, and how to use the product itself or how it is used to solve that problem. And then an after, the outcome. Again, you're showing the full arc there of problem, solution, end result. And then local businesses. These are brick and mortar places that people are going to walk into. Quick tours, showing, highlighting your facility or your office. Maybe you own a gym and there's, a tanning room or that you have really great locker rooms. Focus in on those key hotspots or those key benefits within your facility. And then ask people, book a visit, book a tour, something like that. Those are all really powerful as well. So these are just three. You could adapt these truly to any kind of niche, even if you're not a product based business, right? Like you could still use like stop blank from happening. Here's the 1 minute fix with my solution. So any of these are really adaptable to what it is that you might do. And then, that way you aren't trying to recreate the wheel over and over again. These are proven formulas that work. Okay, so then real production. This is one I hear from clients a lot. It's like, how do I film these? Where do I film them? Do I need to hire, a professional videographer for this? Truly, reels are meant to be filmed on phones and they're meant to be watched on phones. And that organic looking content is performing better these days than anything else. Really high produced videos are kind of scream ad or scream salesy. So you want it to look pretty organic. So you can use a phone. There's really no reason not to, particularly if you're using an up-to-date smartphone. The video quality is extraordinarily great. The sound quality is fine. So just a couple tips on that. For light, face a window. You don't want it behind you. You want to face it and do it at kind of like a 45-degree angle so that you get just a little bit of the light on your face without, glaring and creating any kind of like red eye or anything like that. Obviously, you want to record in a quiet space. If you've got earbuds, you can absolutely use those. But honestly, most phone mics work just fine as long as, you don't have a ton of background noise. You don't necessarily need a microphone or even earbuds. Framing. Obviously, you want, the camera to be at eye level. You don't have to be looking up or down. About an arm's length away. So almost like you're holding it out in front of you, whether you're physically holding it or you've got it on a tripod. That's about the distance that you want. And keep your background clean. I see a lot of this, particularly on YouTube, where like in the background, they've got books and trophies and all kinds of stuff. And all that does, while it may look good, is distract your audience, right? Like they're like, oh, what is that? Or I really like that. I don't like that. What's that book they're reading? And on a long form video, you can maybe get away with that because you're going to kind of bring their attention back in at some point. But on a reel, you don't have time to lose their attention for even a second. So keep your backgrounds really basic. And really clean. And if anything, like one brand element, one logo in the background, or one thing that, looks on brand to you, but don't be distracting. So no clutter, nothing that's going to focus their eyes on anything other than what you want them to focus on. And then again, we talked about these editing essentials already, but lose all of the silence, any of the fluff. You want quick transitions. You want large, bold, high contrast text. Only bold your keywords or only highlight your keywords instead of the whole thing. That will bring people's attention directly to those key points. And then again, end on that static call to action frame for, 5-10 seconds, 2 to 3 seconds, absolutely minimum. All right. So this is essentially what I would break down if I was going to have somebody do a reels only week. And this is an interesting experiment sometimes to see how it would change your visibility. So if I was going to lay out a week for a client with only reels, nothing else, I would basically kind of pick a theme on Monday, right? And then we're going to work through it throughout the week. So on Monday, we're going to identify the problem. We're going to hook them in. Here's the issue. Here's how we're going to solve it and provide that actionable solution. Give them that day one so that you build that authority. Day two, Tuesday, demo it, right? Like show it hands on. Show your tool, your process, your product, whatever it is, in a demo style format. Wednesday, then I'd go proof, right? Befores, afters, client testimonials, case studies, things like that. And then Thursday, objection busting. This is a great time to, do a Q&A, address common objections, address things that might be stopping somebody from pursuing your solution. And then on Friday, that's where you kind of throw your soft offer in there. And by building it up that way, as opposed to like pushing your offer on Monday, you've built a little bit of trust. You've kind of taken them on a journey. And so by the time they get to day 5 or Friday, it doesn't feel salesy. It feels like you've helped them on this journey. And now here's a package solution for you, easy to buy. And you want it to be consultative, not salesy, unless you're doing low cost ecom products. With those, everybody kind of expects that, like, here's a sale, here's something to buy when it's a low cost item like that. But for service based businesses, for high ticket stuff, you want that offer to be very consultative and feel like the solution they're looking for. And then obviously, what we can't measure, we can't improve upon, right? So testing and measuring and then improving based on your results is the best way to figure out what works for you and what works for your audience. So this is kind of a 2-week testing plan that I've developed, where week 1, you try 2 different things. You try a outcome first hook, and then you also try a problem first hook, and you see which one performs better. That tells you a little bit about your audience and whether they are problem aware, because sometimes they aren't, or whether they're only outcome aware. So that's a good test to run to see kind of where your audience is. And then another test I would do is motion versus freeze frame. So some people can get really distracted by moving pictures, a lot of imagery. So know your audience. So try, very still graphics, very bold text, and then also try something a little bit more motion oriented. A lot of those cut breaks that we talked about, and see which performs better. Every audience is different, and you can kind of get a good idea of what's going to perform well. Success metrics that you're looking for, what you're going to decide your winners are: rising 3-second holds. So again, that is in your professional dashboard in Meta. You can see if you've got people listening for 3 seconds, for 15 seconds, longer than that. If that number is going up as you are posting reels and you're getting more and more 3-second or more holds, good, keep doing it. Average watch time, you obviously want to see that increasing. Saves, meaningful comments, any kind of engagement like that is really key. Obviously, your DM keyword, you want to see more and more people adopting that process. And then non-follower reach. That is truly, for businesses, that is the best metric of them all to track, is how many non-followers you're reaching, because those are the people who are not already aware of your business and are potential new customers. So the more of those that you're bringing in, the better you're doing. Try some of these tests and see which perform better, and then just do more of those. All right. And then, so this was all reels essentially. Next week, what we're going to talk about is thread style posts. I'm sure you've seen these where, somebody will start with a headline and then see the comments, and then you'll see them numbered, like 1, 2, different maybe tips or pieces of a paragraph chunks down. These are right now one of the highest performing formats on Meta, and they tend to spark the most engagement. That gets the most comments, the most interaction with the post, even more than reels. So these are really powerful right now. So I'm going to really break those down next week and how to do them, because unfortunately Meta jumbles the responses no matter how you do it. So I'll give you some tips on how to organize it so that it flows cohesively for anybody reading it, and then how to kind of measure your success with those as well. So we'll do that next week. But in the meantime, if anybody has questions about reels or hooks or how to film, anything like that, I am more than happy to answer those, or anything else you may have in the digital marketing world.
Hey there. Thank you so much. It's always so helpful. I love hearing what you have to say. I have a question for you. So I have this idea that I've been working on, and it's an animation style ad.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, you mentioned it, like a face is a really good thing. Like, does it need to be a face? Like, would an animation work, like a very clean with captions, or does it have to be a face?
Nope, animations work great. Obviously, there is a ton of what we call faceless content out there, and it can perform just as well. My recommendation would be to try it both ways. I would do the
Okay.
animation, and then I would also try it as like a live human on camera and see what your results are. I think this is a great case for an A/B test. But I definitely would say, like, try it. I wouldn't say like, no, don't use animation. I think that can be super compelling. It just depends on your audience and honestly the demographic. I think older trends a little more to like the one-on-one real human interaction style, and younger would be more willing to adopt, an animation. So try both and just see what kind of results you get.
Okay, that's really helpful because I wasn't sure if it was like it absolutely will not work. There's no point in doing it, but that's good to know. Testing it out and seeing makes a lot of sense. So
I would
that's
just
really helpful.
I would test it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
And honestly, you could literally like repurpose the exact same script, like film it once, do the animation once, see which, converts better and get your answer that way.
That's a really good idea. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions I can answer or things I didn't tell you about that you want to know about? Happy to review. And if you want any of these slides, any of these hooks, I'm happy to send those to you. Just let me know because really, truly, like there is a formula with these reels, and there's no sense in like trying to like beat your head against a wall trying to come up with the right formula because like we already know what they are.
I also want to thank you for these weekly sessions. When I have to miss them, I always really regret it. I made an appointment with you for next week, but I have sort of a general question. I am really good at being a dietitian and really bad at these social media metrics.
Sure.
My generalized question is I think a lot of people are very niche, right? So I'm a dietitian who specializes in eating disorders, disordered eating, and chronic illness. I've been through a lot, like, I feel like I've been through a lot in the social media world, right? So, like, I had hired a few social media managers who were, uh, I guess, generalists, you would call them, and they didn't really understand my
Audience.
business, right? And so it was like they weren't making posts that really made sense, right? And so now my social media manager is actually a registered dietitian who used to have a practice specializing in what I specialize in, and now she does VA work essentially. But what I'm realizing is she doesn't have the knowledge that like that's in these slides about the metrics of social media. And so kind of my question before we even hop on a call, but really for everyone is like, is there a marriage of this where someone like my VA who has the dietetics experience makes the content and then someone like you takes it and transforms it and looks at the metrics and does that, I don't know if I'm really asking
No.
Okay.
That makes total sense. And
Okay.
that's a common problem across all marketing disciplines, right? It's like, how do you find somebody that knows the marketing and understands the nuances of that and the nuances of my business and what I do and how to speak to my audience? So this is where I rely really heavily on we create essentially a brand manager for all of our clients that knows everything about your business, right? And that's pulled from your website, any brand information you've got. We really dive into knowing your like ideal client personas and what kind of problems they struggle with. And so the goal is to get all of your brand knowledge and information compiled in one place and then apply social media best practices and what is working right now to those. So obviously, the more input we have from the founders or their team, the better. But I would say, like me and my team, we can get 95% of the way there by essentially doing the research and getting all of the information and compiling it once. And I think it comes down to really understanding a couple of things: the pain points of your ideal audience, what they are struggling with, understanding who they are and why they would want to buy from you. And then also really understanding your approach and how you're different, because that's what's going to set your social media kind of apart. So yes, your problem is not uncommon, and that's why a lot of people hire internal, marketing managers so they get to learn the business. But that's just not necessarily reasonable for everybody in a small business format to have, a full-time marketing manager. Right. So that's where that's my process is to really centralize all that knowledge, make sure I understand it, my team understands it. We've got a good foundational knowledge. And then I think from there, it's about applying those best practices in social media and keeping up with it too. Everything changes so quickly. It was literally just months ago that reels could only be 30 seconds and now they can be 90. So keeping up with those changes and applying what's working in the algorithm now is really, really important. So to answer your specific issue, I think like I can get there for sure and know enough to do the right kind of social media. And it really just comes down to making sure we have a really good brand outline for you and understand tone and again those client pain points I would say are the things I focus on the most, because again we're trying to solve a problem, so I need to know what those problems are that they want to solve for.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exhausting to try to keep up with it, right? And I just can't trust. Well, I can trust that my VA does the content really well. I'm not sure she really keeps up with all the
Right.
Instagram stuff, and I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. So, yeah, I'm excited for our call. Thank you for answering.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the thing that I tell all of my clients too is like, I want you to be working in your business, doing what you're an expert at. If it's being a dietitian, I work with a lot of attorneys, it's like, I don't need you to understand click through rates and how the algorithm works. I want you to understand how the law works or how your dietitian services work. It's not productive for your audience or your clients for you to be worrying about marketing metrics essentially. So yeah, I think we can absolutely get there. I can fill you in more on my process and how I do it. But truly, it comes down to like really, really robust understanding of your brand, and then applying best practices from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Anybody else before we sign off today? All right, cool. All right. So yeah, next week we're going to talk about thread style posts. I'm really excited about that one. That is a newer trend that's really evolved over the past month, and it is really crushing it on the algorithm and on engagement. So we'll talk about those and how to do it in a like non-spammy, obnoxious way, and the best way to get it to be cohesive, because that's the hardest part. I will talk to you guys again next week, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.